What's wrong with you? If you're struggling with addiction, you've probably heard that question before. You've probably asked it about yourself. Trying to come up with an answer has kept addicts, addiction counselors, and our entire society busy for years. There are many conflicting theories about addiction. It's kind of like the old story of the three blind men who were asked to describe an elephant. One man felt the tusk and thought it was a spear. Another felt the trunk and thought it was a snake. The third felt the whip of the tail and thought it was a rope. None of them were able to get the big picture and accurately describe the elephant. Our lack of perspective when looking at addiction has been much the same. One popular view has been to look at addiction as a moral defect. What's wrong with you? You're weak, that's what. Broken. Fundamentally bad. Maybe even evil. You could stop if you only had the willpower. It's not that you can't stop, it's that you won't stop. Needless to say, this sort of judgment would make anyone feel guilty, ashamed, stressed out, and certainly able to justify a drink. And it's not just judgmental family members and friends who view addiction as a moral problem. It's the attitude of the entire criminal justice system. What's wrong with you? Who cares? Addiction is just another crime, another bad thing you did. The only solution is to punish you, because if we punish you enough, maybe you won't commit that crime anymore. Then there was the theory that addiction isn't a moral issue, it's a medical issue. Now, that doesn't sound so bad on the surface. You see, it's not you that's flawed, it's your brain. And historically, the medical industry set about solving this in typically clinical ways, like surgery. Maybe a lobotomy will work, and we can just cut the bad part out of your brain. Or a little less invasive, but no less barbaric, electroshock therapy. Nothing like a few hundred watts of electricity coursing through your brain to solve all your problems. Now, compared to those solutions, prescribed medications don't sound so bad, do they? But in reality, they can often result in substituting one addiction for another. And it's not only the medical industry making these mistakes. Some people have been known to justify their addictions by blaming their parents for passing down defective genes. Then some people view addiction as a social issue. If you just stop hanging out with all those social misfits and losers you call your friends, you wouldn't use drugs. Or the big campaigns that are supposed to scare our society away from addictions, like just say no. Now, it's not that all these theories of addiction are entirely without validity, but each one is just like a blind man, feeling his part of the elephant and failing to grasp the big picture. The overriding problem is that these approaches feed the attitude of judgment, and those with the power to judge you are inevitably going to make you feel powerless, condemned, ashamed. It's like you end up in a hole deep down in the ground. From where you are, it's impossible to get the big picture that would help you gain a sense of perspective. And without that perspective, it's way too easy to get stuck in the system. You may be able to get a grip on your addiction for a while, but you may find yourself sliding back to those old patterns of behavior, and eventually, you're right back where you started. Maybe that's where you are right now. So, let's look at that question again. What's wrong with you? Maybe what's wrong is actually the question itself. To ask what's wrong creates shame and guilt that only fuel the fire of addiction. It's not about what's wrong, but about what's missing, because there is nothing fundamentally bad about you. Like every human being on earth, you have needs: security, trust, love. When those needs are met, our attitude about life improves. But when they aren't met, negative emotions are inevitably the result. And addiction is just a coping strategy to try to get what you need. And addiction isn't just your problem. Addiction is a societal problem. If we can all become open-minded to new ways of understanding addiction, we'll be ready to work towards solving the real problem. It's time that we, our entire society, change the way we look at addiction. Because, after all, if nothing changes, nothing changes.